Alright, today we're going to be talking about the Launchkey Mini Mk3. I'm going to be saying why I think this is a great MIDI keyboard, specifically for Ableton Live, but really for any DAW that you use. I think this is a great value. Alright, here she is in action, plugged in and ready to go. I like the keys on these. They're pretty small, as you'd imagine for a mini keyboard like this, but it doesn't get in the way of doing what you want to do. So here's a sample of the drum pads. They feel pretty good, and there's a lot of them, which is nice. They're not the biggest pads, but they sacrifice the size for having more, which is a good trade-off for this keyboard. And they have plenty of knobs for you to use. These work pretty good. The only problem is that they're not endless encoders. And what that means is instead of being able to turn indefinitely, they have exact start and end points. And that becomes a problem because the way this is designed, you're able to control a lot of different parameters with the same knobs and switch back and forth. So it's tough because sometimes you may have a filter envelope that's open, and you want to use that same knob to control something else like volume. But right away when you touch it, it's going to map that new value to where that one is set. So it's a little tricky if you're doing a lot of changes, but if you're just using each of these assigned to one thing, then it works pretty well. And for the pitch and modulation, they don't have the classic wheels, they just have these flat strips that can be activated by placing your finger on them and moving around. I definitely prefer the wheels when I can have them, but these are okay, there's nothing wrong with them. Again, this is something where I can get the sounds that I need out of it. And kind of a bonus, when you have flat strips like this, it's easy to make quick movements, which is impossible with the regular mod wheel, so there are a couple advantages to that. One feature that I like a lot is using the shift button. You can change what the pads are doing and then what the knobs are doing. So I'll go over the pads first. Right now I just have it in drum mode, which basically just means it's working the same as the keys. Whatever instrument you have on, it's going to be played using these pads. Another great way to use the pads is in session mode. So what you can do is you can activate these clips directly from your controller while you're in session mode. So the top row is going to be your clips with the activation buttons, and the bottom row is variable depending on what mode you're set in. So if I hit this and I see all blue, I know it's in solo mode, and I can solo or unsolo tracks. Then I have the mute mode, so these all become mute buttons. And then I have the stop mode, so if my track is playing, I can hit that button to stop it. And the last mode for the pads is custom. So for custom mode, you can make each of these pads do something different. I haven't dove too deeply into that because usually I'm able to get what I want just from the drum setting or the session setting. Then moving on to this section of different colored pads, each of these is going to affect what all of these knobs on top do. So in device mode, it's going to control parameters to the live device. And that's going to be dependent on which track you have selected. Then the next one is volume, so all of these become volume faders. Then they have it for panning as well, and then for sends. And the last one is again a custom knob, which this is where you could do your individual mapping. For instance, if I wanted to map on the master fader, this auto filter. Another thing that's really handy is this ARP feature. and you have a lot of different parameters you can choose between, and that's outlined right above the keys here. While you're holding down the Art button, you can kind of select these different parameters. I won't go into too much detail here, but if you do get this is something that's definitely worth checking out. There's a lot you can do with that. They also have a fixed chord, where you can hold this down and then play the notes that you want to be played within a chord. And now whenever I play a note, it's going to be playing those 2 notes on top of it. Yeah, another plus with this keyboard is it comes with a lot of instruments and effects. It comes with Live Light, plugins from Softtube, Spitfire, XLN. I think the one I've gotten the most use out of is Lounge Lizard. I also like the Clevguard tape emulation, but this one's really nice. It just has some cool electric piano sounds, and there's a few different presets that give you some versatility. The one and only downside that I have to this keyboard is the pads are so bright. It's hard to tell in this lit environment, but a lot of times I'll be using my laptop at night and just have the computer screen on, and these pads are just so bright. They really, I really wish they had a dimmer on them or a way to change that. But usually, if you work in well-lit environments, it's not going to be a big deal. It's just a big deal to me because I work in the dark sometimes. But other than that, I think this is great. The build quality is awesome. It's pretty small. It'll fit in a backpack. You can take this anywhere. And again, if you use Ableton Live, this is like the best MIDI keyboard you can get. It just has so much that specifically works great for live. I definitely recommend it. Alright, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope I gave you some good information about this keyboard and helped you decide if it's the best choice for you.